And I never heard from, Ron. He didn't request his phone. So
Ron, I was texting back and forth. He's on a cruise somewhere. He said it's gone. I just regret. Sure. All right. Well, no, but I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Ready? Good morning, all. It's 9:34. We will call this meeting to order. Ronaldo, would you call the roll for us, please?
Member, Cornfeld,
Here.
Member Zarelli,
Here.
Member Greenwald,
Here.
Member Verdelli. He may be joining Zoom. Member Weiner is absent. Member Packler is absent. And Vice Chairperson Riami is absent. And Finance Director Delaney.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, so before our Pledge of Allegiance, let's just say that at the moment, certainly we do not have a quorum, and therefore what we will be doing is proceeding in a workshop format. Hopefully some members will join us online and possibly in person, we'll see, but that's how we'll proceed at the moment. So can we rise for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to
the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the record, is that Member Verdelli?
Yes, hello.
Okay, Member Verdelli is present via Zoom. And
Hello from cold Ohio.
Okay. Also, for the record, we will take the items that require action, such as the meeting minutes and the nomination of chair and vice chair. We will put them on a future agenda.
Okay, yeah, any items that require action in the absence of a quorum will need to be postponed. In terms of approval of the agenda, what we were going to add, and we will add in a workshop format, is a presentation regarding financials as they relate to the fire department. So that'll be a presentation that will be added to the agenda, and I will leave our finance director to decide whether he wants to do that before or after the regular financial updates.
So what item for the record?
Well, for the record, I guess we can make it under new business item A2 and move everything else down an item.
Yeah, if Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'll go through our standard packet that we usually look at, revenues and expenditures for the year by department, how we did for 2023 right now. And then I put together, it's on the right-hand side, just a lot more granular detail about the fire department, how are we doing budget to actual, what are the expenditures, inception to date for the construction, and all the other equipment. Some labor maneuvers but labor changes that we're considering. And we have a presentation with that as well.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I think whatever order and however you have that prepared will be fine. Again, I will mention that in the past, this committee has requested formally that we be updated periodically on the progress of the fire department. So this is really nothing new. It's just an update that's going to be officially added to the agenda and to your report, for which we thank you. Sure. So with that, if there is no further comment from the members, we'll turn it over to David. Anybody? I'm good.
Thank you. So, I put together a little, packet for you. We're going to start on the left-hand side. It's, 2 pages. This right here, page 1, you're looking at is, the top lines number 1 through 25 are the revenues. So you have, the revenues by each class of revenue. You can see there what we had, budgeted. You can then compare that over to what the actuals came in and the variance. Overall, tax revenue, line 6, tax revenue was 3% greater. That driven mainly by, as you can see, sales and use tax. Florida economy continues to be strong. People continue to relocate to the state of Florida, and that benefits communities such as ourselves. The other section is line items number 7 through 12, miscellaneous revenue. You know, our investments are doing exceedingly well. You can see that you know, we're over $343,000 of interest income for that category. As you can see,
So could you just comment that's because of rising interest rates or?
It's a combination. It's a combination of rising interest rates as well as staff getting a better getting additional financial help from PNC Bank on how to layer our investments. You know, as a government, we are extremely restricted as far as what we can and cannot invest in. For example, we can't put it into Bitcoin, but so there has to be structure. Certain investments can't be very long term, but this here is definitely a product of interest rates rising. So we've done well this year. Grants, you know, grants we're a little bit higher. You can see the reserves there, line number 16. Right, line number 16, that's when we transferred money over from our reserves. We transferred money from ARPA funds over to the budget as we had planned for the fire department. And then other funds. You can see that line item number 21, the building department. The building department continues to do exceedingly well with the relationship that we have with Gulfstream. And so overall, line number 25, you know, overall, we budgeted, you know, a little bit under $30 million, and the actuals were a little bit over $30.6 million. So we have a 2% increase in revenues. So now when we looked at what we just looked at there, lines 1 through 25, those are what we consider our sources of revenues for local government, right? All the different sources. Now we look at lines 26 through 47. These are our uses or the expenditures broken out by departments. Yes, sir.
We can do this 2 ways, and I'll leave it up to you. We can either ask you questions and clarifications as we go or at the end. Do you have a
I have
preference?
no preference.
Okay, before you move on then to expenditures,
Yes.
I just want to ask about a couple of things, just so that everybody understands, and the other members may have some questions as well.
Absolutely.
The first one's a very small one from a financial standpoint, but a very large one from a variance standpoint. Fines and forfeitures went up 824%. Why
Yeah.
is that?
Fines of code violations, right? Code violations for not they've increased quite a bit.
So
And the
we talk-
Tesla is pretty quiet on the road, so watch out for George, everybody. I'm telling you. No, but we up that through code, building fees and fines, things of that nature.
Okay,
But
so this is
code enforcement, some
mostly,
additional speeding. Something.
mostly building department as opposed to like police or library.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Approved
that is-
enforcement.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
And again, you know, the fees are obviously nominal. There is obviously every a 100 yards you go down, someone is building something on
Yeah,
this
no, the
island.
numbers are nominal, but the percent change is very striking.
Correct. And we've had a couple larger code cases that had
Uh,
some larger associated fees for non-compliance. Very irregular, kind of one-off type scenarios on the code side.
Okay. And then the second one, obviously, again, I believe I understand this, but for some people who may not be as involved, the $6 million from reserves is an unusual figure. And just so everybody understands is, I think I do, I think 5 million of that is basically related to the fire department and previous referendums and so on and so forth. Okay.
Yes, and you're exactly right. Like they do typically in businesses, you know, when we close down a business, right, revenues minus expenditures, they get netted out and they go to retained earnings. Okay. And so in the government sense, what this is almost like that. It's retained, it's historical retained surpluses that we've gathered up, that when needed, we bring them in as a source of revenue and they pull it from reserves. And right now, you know, it's an estimate driven predominantly by the building of the fire.
Right. And again, I would just point out for educational purposes that the commission recently and with you in the last year or two went through a whole process in terms of designating where reserves can go and which categories were mandatory and what percentage had to be kept in those reserves, et cetera. So
Absolutely.
again, I just want people to understand that everybody's on top of this as it were.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
5 million is for the fire? That
Yeah.
means some million X is on the other ones?
Right, the other one was from, if you recall, there was some rumbling in Washington, if you recall, that if you haven't used your ARPA funds, they may pull those back, which would not be the first time that a federal government has done that. And so we had excess ARPA funds in the water department as well as the sewer department, because that was our plan. And so right now, what we said is, we said, you know something, we've got to keep the ball moving forward on the fire department to build out. We have a hard deadline when that thing has to be done. Our contract runs out with Delray. We've got to be up and running. So let's go ahead and allocate those resources to that.
Excellent.
Yes.
And just one more clarification, the
Yes.
building fund is permits and fees for building in the
Yes.
town?
Yeah, yeah, you'll also notice that also includes Gulfstream. So, almost a year and a half ago, like, I think, we, the town, smartly entered into, a fabulous agreement with the town of Gulfstream. And they, in summary, the town said, Gulfstream said, you know, you guys are much more equipped to handle a building department. Can you take over our building department in an interlocal agreement? And so we had agreed to do that. And so it did not increase our fixed costs. The only thing it increased was our variable costs, right? Because we kind of do this hybrid method of operations where we have staff and overhead are covered. And then if we need to bring in more inspections and whatnot, then we outsource that to CapGov. And so as the work increases, so does our contract with CapGov increase. So
At the last meeting, I did ask the question, how much was from Gulfstream? I don't remember what the amount is, but I would suggest, since it started halfway through last year or so.
and we have,
This is not Gulfstream, but there is a plus.
Right.
I could look at the tape.
well, what I'll do at our next meeting, or you just give me a call. We have some stuff online. We have resources online where you can look exactly to see what how much is Gulfstream versus how much is Highland Beach. So
Just add, it's as David said, it's been a great relationship financially for the town. So that model has allowed us now to internalize some of that variable cost, and we brought in a senior building inspector. We were lucky to find one in the marketplace. So we brought that one, and we can handle and accommodate with just Highland Beach revenue stream. So the Gulfstream just strengthens our position, but we have added yet another employee to that model, but that was the business decision that Jeff and I made as it relates to building was solely based on Highland Beach volume. So Gulfstream has been pretty good though, 30-40% of our numbers. And we haven't had to amp up for it. So it's been great. It's been really great.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal decision. Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's one of that and the loan that we got for the fire department, as well as the construction of our own fire departments, are just a domino effect of great financial long-term decisions that this town continues to make, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, it's also, it's reassuring to see because one forgets when things are going well with a new idea. But at the time this was adopted I'm sure you have a couple of gray hairs from it. It was very controversial whether we should be doing this at all and whether it was any of Highland Beach's business to be involved in other communities, et cetera, et cetera. And certainly to date, it has seemed to work out very well for all parties concerned. So,
yeah, absolutely.
you know, applause is in order.
We could get out anytime. We're not locked into it.
Yeah, that's correct. I think there's a typical notice, but you know, again, it's the advancement of technology, right? It's the ability to fill things out online. It's the ability to outsource labor to a third-party contractor when your volume gets to be a little bit high. And geographically, you know, they're right in our wheelhouse. So home run on this one. So lines 26 through 46 these are the expenditures. Okay. And so the expenditures this right here compares what we had budgeted versus actual. And you can see most of our expenditures. Matter of fact, the general fund, line 41, the general fund was about $1.7 million under budget. The reason why that is because we had anticipated getting certain invoices from our building contractor that will come in this latter year. And so but all the other departments, as you can see, from town commission to town manager to finance to board clerk to even police department is operating under the budget. Now you'll also notice line 37, right? Solid waste, right? Solid waste is over budget. Well, if you recall, that's when we did an RFQ for solid waste trash services, and that increased, over 100%. Now we passed on some of that cost to our residents, but that's what that was a result of. But, at the end of the day, revenues, line number 25, sources of revenues were up about 2%, greater than budget, and expenditures, were down. So under budget.
And what is shared support? What does that represent?
Yeah, shared support is that department where we put everything, human resources. It's that department that you can consider that to be overhead. You know what I mean? It's not directly allocatable. It's not like, okay, you're the finance department. It's those sources, for example, all the copy machines, office supplies, computers, health, and, just all things like that get into there. And then what happens is they get allocated out.
Right. Okay.
So just one question on solid waste.
Yes.
Is that paid for completely by user fees, or is there another portion of the budget that goes into that as well?
That's all user fees.
Yeah.
And we ate a little bit for the residents, so
Yeah.
we can accommodate that because of the timing. It was a mid-year break versus being on our fiscal year with the contract. So by the time we moved the fees into the residential structure, there's probably about a month. That's probably why you saw that we took the haircut versus the residents in that transition period.
All right, that's what my question was, because I didn't understand exactly how. we
Yeah,
got
there.
Because I thought it was 100% user fees for that.
Yes, yes, it is, right. This right here is more a timing issue. I think we went into June or July was when their contract renewed. Again, we went out for a competitive bid. But all of us were extremely shocked when it came back, over 100% increase, so.
That amount went to solve the deal. It's the, new budget. The higher amount
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And so so page one is budget to actual. Okay, that's what page one represents. Not only revenue, but expenditures. Page two is how it looks by the individual fund.
Okay, so on page one, before we move on, do you or anybody on the board have any concerns or anything that no one's voiced yet? Or are we good?
I just have one comment. You said this last time, and if you're looking at a corporate balance sheet, so correct me if I'm wrong, the reserve number would be the equity. I turned it on, enough on.
You gotta get
Okay,
close.
I'm sorry, okay. So go back to what I was saying, the reserve balance of 6,000,002 of reserves, that in a sense is an equity number, if you're doing that, looking at a balance sheet?
Yeah, well, right now, if you're looking at line number 16, all right,
Yeah.
which is the revenue side.
Yeah.
So we pulled money from our savings, okay? We pulled money from that and we brought it back into revenue in order to balance the budget. Right.
Okay, that's a balance, and
Yes.
on a balance sheet of a corporation, that's equity.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
All right,
exactly. Yep.
that's what I'm confirming in my
Yes.
mind. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And just some clarity on the solid waste. That's trucking movement, waste removal, correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
The solid waste line, that contract is for trucking, waste removal, etc.
He's looking for clarity on the solid waste. Is it truck and removal? Is it?
Yeah, it's all of it.
Yeah, it's all of the above. It's collection as well
Okay.
as the dumping fees that we're all part of. Yeah.
Is there any fuel cost adjustment capability in that contract, or is that a fixed contract?
No, it's I think it's a 3 to 5 year contract. It's annually, it would be 7% annual increases going forward. But yeah.
There is no
So-
like fuel escalators or recalculations
Right.
Or indexed movement. They basically picked fixed numbers on that contract.
All right, so there's no variable on fuel. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So again, here you can tell if we go on to page two. Now what page two does is page two, now we're not looking at budget versus actual, right? Page two now just looks at the actual revenues minus expenditures by the fund. So you have the general fund, you got the building fund, you got the water fund, you got the sewer fund. And so, and then not only that though, but it also just shows any transfers also between funds. And so you could see that, for example, line number 17, you can see that on the water fund. So if you go to line 17 and then you go to the top and you're under water fund, we had to pull in order to balance the budget to zero on the water side of life, right? We had to add about $460,000 there. We're getting close. We're getting close to having the water and the sewer fund balance. Okay. But these two funds are interesting because here's why. A large percentage, not a large percentage of their costs, but the fixed cost for repairs and maintenance are an important expenditure for these funds. So if we delay capital improvements, right? If we delay capital improvements, then the fund can look better, but those capital improvements cost us more over time. But anyway, it's a good representation as far as where the money has come in for each fund. That is line number 18. And then how each fund expensed, or the expenditures and uses. And you can also tell that we also lines number 19 through 26. Those are what they were used for: general government, public safety, culture and recreation, public works, sanitation, post office, and whatnot. And then how much there was capital outlay. So it's pretty straightforward. Again, extremely healthy for the activity that we have going on here. So I'm very pleased. And staff, we're also getting ready today to release our trial balances to our auditors. And so our year end is September 30th. Keep things going, adjust a few things here and there, but our auditors today will have the trial balance, and that'll kick off our financial audit season. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I'll just make a brief comment about water and sewer.
Yes.
That's always a complicated one. And again, the town a few years ago went through a whole process in trying to determine rates and what was a fair way of doing all of this, because of the fairly large fixed costs that involve all the equipment necessary and everything else. As the residents will notice, their bills are based partially on a usage fee based per gallon. And that actually transmits indirectly into their sewage bill as well. As well as a figure that reflects presumably fixed costs, namely the startup cost part that's on everybody's bill.
And the debt, right?
Yeah, and the debt. And that's always going to be a somewhat controversial thing, depending on where you live and so on and so forth, in terms of the best way to calculate that. But again, the town went through quite a process led by she wasn't at the time, but by the current mayor to help put that together, along with some consultants that the town engaged. Because I know I get questions about water bills and so on all the time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well,
but at least it's balancing out, so that's a good thing. It seems to be certainly working in that regard, which is good.
It is. So this right here, again, this right here represents a full year, FY 23. We're 2.5 months into FY 24. But everything is looking solid. Obviously, revenues are coming in at where we anticipated. Expenditures are lower than budget, mainly on the water and sewer side. The expenditures are lower predominantly because we pushed capital expenditures into the next fiscal year. Yeah, so the next year and a half will be, we're starting to look at the sewer relining project. So a lot of those projects there will be taken off in that fund. So,
All right, so once again, before we go further, does anybody have any questions, concerns? Anything they want further explanation, or where we're headed, or whatever? Now's the time to speak up. Hearing none?
with the board's approval, we'll go into the right side of your packet. This right here is predominantly fire and rescue and our department. Let me start off the first page that you will see. I called it on the top, County versus Delray versus Highland Beach Fire Rescue. And so what you can see here, I picked FY 25. What you can see here is what the estimated costs would be, you know, if the town had three options. These would be the three options, right? As a property owner, you can either go, you could, the town could elect to go with the county. And the county's millage rate for fire rescue is 3.4581 mils. I put in our current assessed values, and that would be the cost. If we stayed with Delray, 7.5 million would be the cost. And our projection now going to Highland Beach, that is our cost, operating cost. And so going the path that we decided on about 2 years ago, going the direction of Highland Beach, our own fire department, is not only proving to be less costly, but we gain more control over our fire department as well as better service. And so that's what I wanted to kind of show you here on this chart here.
Let it settle in. Let it set those numbers settle in. These are big things you read about in the paper with all these other communities on our own. And what this does include that we'll talk about, I'm sure, I know the chair wanted to talk about this. This is with the 2472. This is with 2472, which is a premier shift, recruitment, retention. So under that model, your other options are quite more expensive. So as David would say, this was a smashing success and the right decision to make for the community. It really, I mean, the numbers are really bearing out that we're in the right space.
Well, if these numbers again turn out to be correct, and it's a projection, so we don't,
Mm-hmm.
that is best guess, best educated guess.
Thank you.
It would be somewhat remarkable in the sense that 4 years ago, or whenever the initial studies were going on, it was estimated that this would save roughly $2 million a year. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like that. And now these projections a few years later say the same thing, which is, in my experience, somewhat unusual, actually. So that's very good.
One question, what did we pay Delray for 2023 total?
2023,
somewhere?
yeah, well, I have it, that's on your third page. 2023 would be almost 5.6 million.
Okay. Planning 2024 must have been,
2024, we estimated that it was going to go to 6.6 million.
even that's understandable, but it must have been very difficult for you to write that number in.
Yeah, well,
You know, I'm saying it with a smile. I
Right.
understand. It's a mix.
you know, what's interesting, right? Because typically the more you pay for something, right, the higher level of service you get. In my opinion, and this, I only share my opinion, this is the complete opposite, right? It's almost like the more you pay, the less service you can get. And that's
Reverse
why,
Psychology, sure.
Yeah.
So we're saying that 5.6 in 2023.
Mhm.
And we'll be at that number at 2025, but that's a good number. It's not
Yeah.
a bad number.
And-
That's
and
it.
I've-
Where do we go from
I've
there?
indexed it on page 3 of our handout. I've indexed that and we'll go through that.
Okay, I'll stop there. Thanks.
Yes. So the other thing too, if you go to the next page, here's the next page. This right here is all capital project related. So the next page, you have professional fees, building, fire CIP, which is construction in progress, direct orders. Let me explain what that line item is. That line item is our ability as a local government to purchase things on our own and not have to pay sales tax. And so certain AC units, refrigerators, stoves, big ticket items, right? We're able to pull that out of the contract with the builder, Kaufman Lynn, And we're able to direct purchase those and save money as well in the contract. And so what you have here is you have all the way up through to date. So if I were to look at the column that says spent on project, 52%, that's how much we've spent on the project to date. A lion's share of that is the Kaufman Lynn, obviously building the building that we see out there. It's a fixed contract cost, so that's always good. Most of the equipment, the fire, the ladder truck, the ambulance, right? We've already purchased that. Professional fees, we're not expecting that to increase. As you can see, we haven't spent anything in the current year right now. And so at the end of the day, if the budget was $11.5 million, we've spent $6.6 million, 17,000 or 52%. We have about another 48% or another $5.5 million to go.
And what I would say on that, again, that's David's conservative estimations, which we like to work from. So I can always deliver good news. So it's a 1-2 punch, he's conservative. I come in and say, you know what? We just saved a bunch of money. The structure is not going to be, we're tracking under budget on construction, just to let you know. So we're doing quite well with direct purchase orders. When Kaufman Lynn gave us their construction manager at risk contract, they anticipated continued escalation on certain product costs. Those have now flatlined and improved on delivery scenarios. So some of those escalation in costs we're not seeing as much. So those are coming down a little bit. So we're anticipating, a couple $100,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. I don't know exactly, but there's couple $100,000 at least worth of savings from that initial project based on concrete cost stabilized, slightly went down, the fuel, trucking, all those things improved for us during construction. We didn't think it would,
Right.
But it has. Steel, right? All the rebar, all that stuff came in better than they had anticipated when they built that budget out for us. So,
Right.
And again, some of the other items, we did better on equipment, some better deals on equipment that we initially anticipated at higher amounts. Professional service fees, when we get into this further discussion, more detailed discussion, when we talk 2472, David estimated some costs that are just not going to come to fruition. So we're going to be tracking a little bit better and have that room in there within the budget.
Well, right now you're comfortable with the 11,000,005.
Yeah, that's a very, very comfortable number.
And
And
you got
again,
more
that
cost.
number was built on, $1.2 million, $1.3 million for a new ladder truck.
Mhm.
Chief was able to go out and get one for 800,000. So that only has 17,000 miles on it. So minimal hours. So we did really well. There's some things that we were able to tackle during acquisition that when we anticipated was higher, but then when we actually brought it in, the numbers came in a little bit better. Other items you'll see when we talk about the budget for fire closing out this year, last year, this year that we're in, we didn't fully, and I think even when we go live next year, there's a lot of things we don't know what exactly the cost was. So we were very conservative. And then as we're getting our boots on the ground, those costs are becoming more clear and more in favor of us, right? So the continued good financial blessings are continuing, that we're doing a really good job of when we control those costs, they're really starting to come down or recognize what it is we have to do. We're coming in a lot better.
So between the loans and what's left in the reserve to use, that 11 is good.
Oh yeah. That loan is
Yeah, that's why I'm getting back to our,
amazing.
I'm getting back to
product. Who
our
would've known?
equity number. So that's meaningful.
So that's kind of what we did here. So the numbers spent on the project, this is from when we went live to yesterday. And so, yeah. And so it's coming in again, Kaufman Lynn, that's going to be the lion's share. What is that? Almost $8.6 million of it, right? they typically do bill us on a normal basis, but you know, as you can see, that number will start to ramp up. But we always have a contingency that we hold back in government, right? We hold back about 5 to 10% for retainage for any open items. But they're doing an excellent job, knock on wood, and it's coming to fruition.
What have we pulled down from the loan so far?
We pulled down,
thing?
we pulled down the whole thing. Yeah.
And that was for,
That was a little bit less than $5 million. Right. Yep.
At 3.26%.
3.2.
Here,
We had 18 months draw schedule.
Yeah,
period.
right. For 18 months, we didn't have to pull anything down, and they didn't charge us a thing.
they weren't looking for a little hole in their agreement to,
No, no.
man, This is great.
No, I'm telling, it was,
Excellent.
yeah, it was actually put together. So, and then what I did is the next page is my 5-year budget for operating the fire department. Now, in order to compare apples to apples, okay, you'll see that I'm looking at operating expenditures, okay? And so here is the fire department's budget. Here is salaries and overtime and health insurance and whatnot, everything that's that could possibly in there. One of the things that the town manager had said that I was a little bit too conservative on was like professional fees
Yep.
and other contractual services. Look,
Yeah, those are probably twice as high as they need. to be,
right.
so,
I've got $500,000 each year in that. And also you can see each year I added a column there that has my escalation. You know, what I think that those fees would escalate year over year would be. Now you'll notice that, you know, the last 2 line items are the debt service. Our debt service is fixed, right? But if we wanted to keep it apples to apples, how are we comparing to our existing contract? How are we comparing that to, then you'd want to pull out the debt service, just so you're looking at operating expenditures for the fire department.
didn't we have a prepaid ability? on these
Ye-
loans?
Yes,
At any point in
prepaid.
time, partial or whole without
They're not
penalty.
factoring this on this at all.
No.
On reading
Nope.
this.
So we may, if you recognize, like, that's how my mind starts working. Okay, we came out in the black on the budget. Maybe we start chipping away at that. And I know the mayor will probably be on that pretty quickly. She doesn't like carrying debt. So I think we over the next couple of years will have an opportunity to shrink that more quickly, improve that payback period that David's going to go over here shortly. So I think we have that opportunity that we could, start parsing away at that debt, because our reserve fund or equity is going to be continuing to grow yet again because of the conservative nature and some of the uncharted waters we were heading into that we over budgeted for, or more conservatively budgeted for, is going to shake out. And I think we're going to see a little more into the black a bit.
Yeah.
But I did make some promises. I know Dr. Greenwald was there, that, next year we could probably look at, David and I have always been on hold the millage, right? Don't ever look to fluctuate it, take good years to balance the bad. But I think we could be looking at some slight reductions to millage, or holding and buying down the debt versus, those are good conversations I'd love to have in that public arena is, do we lower the millage a little bit, pay down debt to save costs? I mean, those are great conversations
But
to
if
have.
we're paying 3.2 and we're getting
All right.
not 3.2 on our money, but getting a good rate.
Yeah.
And that's out at
Yeah.
2%.
Right.
Why would you want to do anything at that point, but be more conservative, pay 1 or 2% for your debt and hold on to the cash?
Those are our summer conversations that we
Yeah.
get to have here in about 6 months. Once we get,
Yeah.
how did the property values hold? I'm guessing, I don't think we had
Mm.
huge growth rates again. I don't see sales price dropping, but, I think we're going to be in a very solid position where these conversations are really meaningful versus where you see in other communities where they can't raise the millage fast enough to keep up with their exploding costs. We're kind of the opposite, where we have the ability to really control, and we've done all this moving to a full service community, right? And this is, kudos to this town. This is, smart people. We're strong. We think well. We have the vision. We've done a lot of great things here.
Few comments on the projection sheet.
What's-
It's,
what page?
The last page, I'm sorry, that we just discussed.
Oh, yeah.
You've got a lot of inflationary escalators in there, it would seem to me. I mean, 7.5% raises for everybody for 5 years in a row. I mean, that sounds like a lot. I'm not saying that fire people aren't valuable people, but they're already going to be working 2 days a week.
That's gonna be our new thing. You'll be like looking at me. Firefighters are kind of expensive. Not much is left to chance and not much is left on the table. No offense to those watching. Those are contracted amounts where our current rate table, that's also cost plus step, right? So we didn't hire everybody at the top step in the positional category. So we kind of got everybody in the middle of the range. So they're still structurally get steps, which are like 4%, 4.5% between, say, you're in grade year 4 versus year 5 in the steps. You get that plus cost of living adjustment. So 7% is
Okay.
a real number. Some
So
of the other escalating amounts,
So that's a projection, but it's based on stuff that's already built into contracts, is
right?
what you're
For
saying.
labor, I think the labor cost is pretty accurate. Some of the overestimations, health insurance, hopefully we're always nervous that somehow it's going to bite us, but we keep on doing well. Utilities, insurance bonds, workers' comp, some of the other stuff at 5, 6, that might be a little conservative, but at this point, we kind of want to hold there. But again, this number is going to come down because the contractual and professional services, I talked with Chief Joseph, those are very conservative. He wants, in exchange for the 2472, he's going to start working with me to really sharpen pencils in order for us to deploy that model, the other costs, because everything's new, right? Everything we have is new there. So we don't have a lot of capital on the early parts of our model, which is beautiful too, is we don't have to constantly replace stuff that older agencies do. We could be really pencil tight on a lot of line items in the first 5 years of our implementation.
The union is the same as Delray or what?
We
is it?
start without a union. I think we will be in a union, but that's it has to start once you start working. So it usually takes a couple of years before the union will form. They have to do a card drive. There's a statutory process to form. I do not know of any fire agencies without a union. It's inevitably going to come. Who are they going to join? Create their own. They could join Boca's union. They could join Delray's union. They could join the county union. We don't know where they're going to fall into that.
How do we judge the pricing for our firemen? Like based on union pricing or was something that we felt?
So basically, we did a
comfortable about?
market rate study. So we looked at how firefighter, paramedics, driver, engineers, captains are paid throughout the county. And we took a couple agencies that we are not going to have the legs to keep up with vis-a-vis like Boca, right? They just really pay over the top.
You cut out the high and the low and
Then we kind of
and it's
found
unaccounted.
we found the middle and we went just a little bit above that.
Mhm.
So we're, when we start recruiting now, we're going to have a new schedule. We pay more than Boynton and Delray, not Boca rates. But we're very attractive being in this South County. We're more affiliated with cost structures to the Miami side of things or Fort Lauderdale side than West Palm. It's cost of living really is difficult here and then to get folks to the island. So we kind of picked a spot a sweet spot to recruit, right? So very fair. I think we're kind of in the middles agencies, we're competitive with the Palm Beach Gardens. A little bit better than, Boynton Delray, Green Acres. So we're in a good spot, but keeping up with Boca is tough. They have a lot of corporate tax base that we can't do. But again, it's nothing to sneeze at. We're paying well. Everybody that we're recruiting has got big smiles on their face. The thing that this town's made commitment to that is very attractive compared to the others is the health insurance. That has really been our best recruitment tool. Oddly enough, giving Blue Cross Blue Shield for an employee at no cost versus all these other towns that really clip away at the premiums. We have that ability. That's our sweet spot. can't give pay, but we got great benefits. So they kind of look at that. And the FRS is also the other,
So use Blue Cross Blue Shield for them. They're not part of.
everybody's got it here.
Oh,
The
so
town-
That's what's
the
helping us.
Town is,
I would
yeah.
Yeah, we did
suggest
really
so the
well. We did
rates
less,
are-
2% less than, Humana. So we were in a good, my nervousness is at some point, Blue Cross and Blue Shield will
So
jump up on us a little
then you
bit.
higher
Leave
rates
that to
for
you,
fi-
Doc, but yeah, they're gonna
higher
come
rates for
back.
Firemen, I thought it'd be higher rates, insurance rates.
No, there's other,
There's more risk involved in.
funny
They
that
do.
the risk for some of the cancer coverage payouts on disabilities, things of that for police and fire, a lot of that's packaged in our FRS. And that's why the high risk category has a higher multiplier for your pension because the statutes put in, the cancer risk policies and coverages, they bury that into the FRS. So when you go out on pension, what we've already paid into FRS covers some of those statutory liabilities for risk. So it works really well for us to have the FRS because it protects us in the long term. It keeps the cost today, not long term. But a lot of those little peculiar things you see with police and fire are tied up in the FRS.
Well, that's right. That, when it comes to pension, if you get how does that work? If they're with another fire department, they're coming to us, was there any crossover?
So what we're getting is folks, I can't be 100% sure, but there may be a couple of other FRS community fire rescue personnel that came over. Most of these folks have, we have a slightly older, more experienced, let's say that's it, more experienced or time served people coming over where they're looking for their second pension. So pretty common in public safety. I call it the double dip. So, they start at 22, put 20 in somewhere else. They're still 42. They still have a lot of legs left and they come here and work another 10 to 15.
So the last page here, or not the last page, yeah, that page right there, right. So I think it's the third page. Sorry, I'll number them next time. 1, 2, yeah, let me see, let me make sure.
You hold it up. Show 'em what it looks
1,
like.
yeah. 2, 3, yeah, I'm sorry, the fourth page, sorry, the fourth page. So now, in order to determine whether or not a project, we do this in the private sector, right? In order to determine whether or not you should go forth with a project is you want to look at the net present value and how long it's going to take you to recoup your investment. So what we did is line number 1 is the investment cost of the project, $11.5 million. Broken out here on lines 26, 27, and 28 is the $11.5 million on the bottom. Then I used a discount factor of 5%. If you go to lines 12 through 25, this right here is, you'll see in the middle there, it says Delray contract from FY19 to FY23. This right here is actual costs. Okay. You can see there that it averaged about 7.1% annually as an annual increase. You can also see on lines 19 through 25, I put some footnotes here because in 2024, we were estimating that the Delray contract was going to increase by $600,000 for the new additional positions that they were pushing for, as well as line item number 4. In 2025, we also assumed that they would have billed us for pension-related costs that they had failed to include in prior years. So anyway, so when we look at all of that cost, comparing that to our budgeted forecast, we have a savings here annually. And so I'm predicting that in less than 7 years, line number 10 and 11, in less than 7 years, this project will be cash flow positive. It has a net present value, right? So we're going to lay out $11.5 million, and it's going to take us less than 7 years to not only pay back that investment, but also start to reap future benefits. So this is This is a net present value savings projection based on our costs. For line items 19 through 25, in the middle there, you'll see a budget forecast. I used the higher escalated budget amounts, which include debt service. It also includes on the last page what our staffing is going to be going, or what we're anticipating our staffing going to be going to. It also includes those numbers. So if you were to ask me, point blank, David, when do we break even, or when does this project that we started to go forth with, when does that become positive with the savings? I would tell you that it would be in less than 7 years. I know it's a lot to look at, but the idea is that you take what your estimated net benefit is, and I tried to color code it as well, and you multiply that by a discount factor, you get your present value of the benefits, and you compare that to what you actually paid. And line number 11 says that our benefits will have exceeded our costs by in 6.5 years, we'll begin to get positive.
Okay, this is the first time I'm seeing this, so I'm not like a financial guru with any of this, so it takes me a little while to
So
look through
what-
it and really figure it out. But let me ask you this.
Sure.
How does this compare to what we were seeing a few years ago before this whole project got started, in terms of what the consultants and the financial advisory board and everybody else who was looking at it thought this would be, recognizing that lots of things have changed since then, and the initial cost that was going to be maybe 8 million is now up to, going to be 11.5. There's been a lot of inflation, both in wages and everything else, but not only here in Delray and every place else. How is all this looking as it looks like it's coming out now compared to what we were originally projected and what people voted on, to be honest?
So I would say in that light, we probably on the payback period added about 15 months to our original estimation. And that is not only those two things, that's also accounting for moving to a 24 to 72. So if we didn't get that newer pressure of changing the shift model, which means we got to staff up, meaning adding more personnel, I think we would have been, even with inflation, we would have been spot on. I think what really pushed our repayment is moving to this new model that's being adopted throughout the county or everybody around us, and that drives up cost.
Right, but that, if we were, as you pointed out on a previous page, if we were using another service, either Delray or the county, which were our two options, that would be included in that and would drive those costs up as well.
And again, that's what and again, their models are a little bit more top heavy and weighted. So moving to this 24 to 72, we're in a better position because in order to undertake that activity, it's only bringing 4 new personnel on. So for us to implement that model versus a Delray, a Boynton Beach, a Riviera Beach, which are all doing this over the next couple of years, they're talking having to add, 30 people. So for us, it's a little bit easier to pill to swallow, and we're doing it up front in the early parts of it. But, and what that is, just to let folks know, we started out on this venture as a 24/48. That means you work for 24 hours, you get 48 hours off, and then you come back to your next shift for 24, 48 off. After every 3 or 4 shifts, I know that the chief's not here, you get what is a Kelly day, which is an extra day off. And with that, it kind of over time, you have to solidify the Kelly day with overtime. Somebody's got to take that shift. And then basically after the first year, you start getting people not only on Kelly days, but then you'll have a vacation day. So then it really puts our model slightly below what we had envisioned under the COCPN without overtime. So when we looked at these things, we said, okay, overtime is going to grow a little bit, but we were okay. Overtime wasn't so bad. What got us is Boca for the last 30 years has been a 24/72 agency. That's why it's kind of the premier fire agency everybody wants to work for. High pay. They work one shift one day and you get 3 days off. It's kind of nice, but you don't get Kelly days. So the overtime is more controllable, more manageable. Well, since then, about a year ago, in the middle of this implementation, Boynton Beach did it. So they went to the 24/72. I have no idea how they're paying for it with their tax base, but they're doing it and implemented it with their fire unions. Delray and Riviera Beach about a month and a half ago, both are moving to the 24/72. So now we're an island amongst ourselves if we stayed at 24/48. So talking with Chief, Matt and Tom, they basically, this is where the fire service in Palm Beach County and South Florida is kind of going to. The further south you go, they're doing a lot of 24/72s. You know, we basically looked at the numbers. It adds about $400,000, $455,000 to do it. That's balanced against some reductions in overtime. So for us, we just want to do that. So we become that and we start there versus trying to back our way into that model over the next 2 to 4 years. The good thing is it doesn't change our overhead structure. And what I mean by that is I don't have to hire another, what they call white shirts in the fire service. I don't need to hire another battalion chief or another deputy chief to manage yet another. So all we do is just add 4 people and add a 4th shift, rotate everybody's schedule. So when we add those people, we don't have to add the management side of it, where if you were to look at like a Delray model, they're probably going to have to add a battalion chief. And then there's probably another administrative type person that has to be added to handle the next, just the growth of the size of that organization is going to go, you know.
And
Yeah.
not only that though, but also remember that in our contract, we're not only paying for the highest paid employee, but we're also paying times 5% for their overhead, plus 5% for their general fire department overhead. So our costs, if you wanted to get to the bottom line on this one here, you would look at lines 19 through 25. So here I look at how much Delray's costs would have been on the left-hand side versus our cost on the right-hand side. And in the yellow shaded area, that's the estimated benefit of how much we would be saving. We're going to have more control, better service, and not paying almost 10% of their overhead as just an additional cost on already high paid salaries.
And again, if we were to continue down the Delray option, if we recall from about a year ago, they made another union contract where they have to have for every 2 people a lieutenant on a rescue. We've avoided that model and stayed with the driver engineer, which is a slightly elevated grading of position above a firefighter paramedic. So with Delray, not only do they go and add another shift, but they add a lieutenant to every rescue. For every 3 people, they have to have a lieutenant on rescue, where we said, no, we're just going to, there'll be 3 and a driver engineer will fill that role versus something that's between a lieutenant, between a driver engineer and a captain, right? They had another management position in there and kind of graded out. So it's a little more expensive in their model, where us, we just add another shift line and we're good, you know? So it works. It's easier for us. It really is. Speaking with the North Palm fire chief, when we got this started, he always told me, whatever that model is you're starting with, just add 2 right away, just for shift problems you're going to have, injuries, vacations, whatever that is, you know, just go ahead and do it. So we're kind of actually doing that now. And we're just 4 instead of 2. But at the same point in time, we meet that 24/72 model, which is, again, recruitment and retention, right? Everybody wants that shift schedule.
Yeah, and I asked some of these questions just as a more of a devil's advocate kind of thing, so that people can hear some that
Sure.
you guys are thinking about all this stuff. I'm also pretty clearly jealous of the firemen's union, because they didn't have those rules when I was working 36 hours on and 12 hours off and so on and so forth. So, you know,
True.
good
true.
for
I
them
mean,
having 2 shifts a week, but
Right, exactly. And
it's a nice, but again, you know, we
no, it is what it is. That's how,
Yeah.
it's just kind of a unique industry, I guess. I mean, that seems
we're
to be
paying
how
up
it
for those
works.
times when we really need them. So it's a difficult expense model, right? Or
Right.
business model. That's why, any service left in government are ones that can't make money in the private sector. So that's why we have police and fire in public sector, because there's no real profitable way to make that work. So that's why we have to carry it on the taxes versus a private sector doing it through a fee-based structure. So.
Well, just make sure they have adequate refrigerators. So when we do the weekly pancake thing out in the courtyard, they.
Yeah, we
help
will
us with
too.
that.
It's, and again, hopefully we'll be able to, in the next month or two, we got the commission got a little bit of a rough construction tour yesterday at the topping off ceremony. It's a beautiful facility. That space will work well. The EOC that we're putting in place is magnificent. So we have a control center during, risk events and, hurricanes. Basically, we'll be prepared to help the residents through all of that. It's a beautiful spot, but again, I'm with you. There's gonna be lots of community events. I think in the long term, because I think that really connects the government back to the residents. And I think that's how we succeed and have succeeded in getting to this point, is the connection between the residents back to the service.
Yeah.
And, I know Chief Joseph buys into that model. Hartman's displayed that model, how you do policing in a community level. We're gonna do that same thing with the fire service.
Yeah, and I think it's reflected in the prior referendum results that the community is looking forward to all these add-ons as it were.
And what the last page of the handout is, this is what we had originally planned is the top half, right? These are all the positions here on the fire department. This right here is what their starting salary, their estimated overtime, FRS, health insurance, other employer taxes. So the top half is, that's what we started with. Now they want to go, you'll see the blue arrow shift down, right? So now they want to go to this type of labor structure. And the very, very bottom is the net change between the two. So, we increase 4 positions. I didn't anticipate that overtime would completely go down, but I did estimate that we would see a reduction in our estimated overtime. But all these figures that you're seeing here with this new structure has already been included in your other financial projections. So we've already kind of taken that into account. We know that our budget has some areas that we can still kind of drill down into, especially those professional and consulting things that are around $500,000 a year that we can kind of whittle back. But again, it from start to finish, this project is really just a home run. I mean, in my opinion, you have a payback period of less than 7 years. You have enhanced service at a reduced cost when you compare it to the alternatives, and it's just a home run.
So regarding the payback period.
Yes.
The terms of the loan are 7-8 years, meaning that the loan will be paid off in 7 or 8 years, or just the benefits of the loan and building the fire department will be felt in 7 or 8 years.
The payback is the entire cost of the project. So if I were to come to you and I would say, listen, I want to do this project. It's going to cost $11.5 million, but by year 7, by 6.5 years, we will have paid all that back and continuing to push money into our reserves. That's what the payback period looks like. Now, our loan, we can pay back, at any time, right?
Right, so no prepayment penalties, low interest rate, terms open.
The loan, and really that's what started this whole project off, right? Can you imagine a bank saying, sure, we'll give you a line of credit open for 18 months
Right.
and we're not going to charge you anything
Lock in
for
a
it.
rate.
Mhm.
rate.
Right. So,
And that was PNC?
yeah,
Did that?
PNC, and we
Oh,
hit it.
Synovus.
Oh, I'm so sorry,
Synovus.
Synovus, yes.
Okay.
And we hit it right at the right time, 3 point,
6.
Thank you, 3.26%. We just hit it. This project, it's a miracle. It truly is. So.
No, I'll tell you, being working on these construction projects for other clients, you guys did a great job. I mean, 7-year net present, a 7-year cash flow, positive cash flow on a project of this size. I mean, really, really good. We typically, when we do work in the public sector, we look anywhere between 10 and 15 years on a payback, and knock this thing off in 7. Congratulations, guys.
Any other comments, questions for David and Marshall? We're good?
Just a few add-ons. What I was concerned about it, we've spoken about. Inflation has flattened out, supply chain, so we're on the other curve. So when you put 11.5 in, which you did about a year,
11.5, yeah, it's about a year ago.
About a year
we
ago.
Got to those numbers, yeah.
and that wasn't the case then. So I think, hopefully, I'm right, that 11.5 will come in modestly lower on, that's great. Also, I thought we were thinking about leasing the equipment. Doesn't make a difference, whichever is better. But if you're buying used equipment, obviously, I ran my companies on preventive maintenance. And it's very difficult to teach people, why are you paying all this money? I don't see anything happening. It's very, very important. If you stick to preventive maintenance, of course, this whole operation, I think, is a major, major plus.
And we were, we looked at leasing, but when we found that deal in Alabama for that piece of equipment for a closing down or a shuttering of a fire district, I'm glad that opportunity presented itself because it's a matching piece of equipment too, from an operational perspective. So both of our ladder trucks are the same year with the same company of the same, so everything's going to be.
And how old were they?
I think it was a 17. I think both pieces of equipment are 17. Maybe the next one's an 18, but it has low hour usage in a non-salt environment. So it's,
If you have a program for maintenance now,
that's gonna be a pain.
yeah, so you have one truck and you might have to put it out just for preventive maintenance.
Well, they'll be washing that equipment all day,
I'm
Gotta
talking
keep
about
the
what's
ladies in
underneath.
town happy, so there'll be a lot of,
They'll look
washing.
beautiful on the outside. I'm talking about, how do you take a truck out of service for 30 days if something has to be done?
That's why we have a reserve of every unit. So
We
we'll
do.
have a backup for everything. So when one goes down, we can. The one tricky thing we have to do that's, probably runs up some of our we have to get diesel delivered versus having it stored on site. So delivery of diesel, you got to pay the transportation cost. It's not a huge issue, but that's kind of a difficulty. And, but luckily there's a maintenance yard, I think in Coral Springs, that does the work on all this equipment. So it's not too far to get there to get the work done. So.
Good. Good job.
Okay, if there are no further comments, thank you, and we'll move on to the next item, which would be B, which is the meeting schedule. Again, we can't really vote on anything today, but anybody may, at this point, offer up comments to Linelda about if you know that you specifically won't be at any of the meetings. And I'm sure she'll put out notices again to the rest of the group before the next meeting. For example, I know that I will not be here on January 25th.
And that's only a month away. Is it required or it's just getting us back on schedule?
Well, I think that historically we meet 4 times a year and then additional meetings if there's items
I
to
will be
be
here.
discussed.
I know I cannot be here that day. I'll be out of
So
the country.
clearly one of our problems, and this is going to need to come up at a future meeting, is what do we do about our attendance? Because if one looks back and over the last year, we've had a grand total of 1 meeting, as best as I can tell, where we've had a quorum. And that's really inadequate in my view. So we either need to figure out some way to change the rules, as it were, since we're really not a decision-making group to begin with. We're not a quasi-legal group. I mean, all we have the power to do is to recommend. It's not like code enforcement or the planning and zoning board. So I don't see why the rules can't really be changed to at least like include people who are on Zoom or something. We currently have members who we know are out of the area 6 months a year anyway, so they're going to miss 2 meetings no matter what. At any rate, for a variety of reasons, it's proved very difficult to get a quorum over the last year, which in my mind, having been here, and now for the last 2 meetings, in spite of any lack of authoritative position, ending up chairing the meetings, we need to, if we can, try and figure out some way that this group, which I think has the potential to really be a contributing factor for the town to become a more coherent, effective body somehow. And I don't claim to have the answers necessarily, but that's something that we need to look at. But for now, we do end up needing a quorum. So I would encourage any members of the committee, if you have dates that you know I'm going to be out of town that day, to please let Lynelda know that she can come up with a schedule where we have a fighting chance of getting a quorum present. So that's item B. Does anybody have any further comment on item B?
I do. With that, our charter says quarterly meetings. We pick January. It doesn't necessarily have to be January. It could just be within that first quarter. If you all decide March, it could be March, whatever, when the members are all available to attend. The code does say May as your organizational meeting, so that's why we have May on there. But the other meetings, you could pick whatever month within that quarter
Right.
where you all.
I understand that, but the problem's been people have to, in a proactive fashion, get Lynelda the dates that they are not going to be available so that she can come up with dates that we have a fighting chance of getting a quorum. And so that we can avoid this last minute, well, we can do it, but we need to move the time, or the last minute, we can't do it at all, et cetera, which has been our unfortunate pattern for some time now. And it, I don't know, we need to, I think collectively as a group, we need to do better about that. So when everyone has a chance to figure out when they are not going to be available, please give Lynelda those dates so that she's not just getting a schedule out of thin air and we have a fighting chance. Because I know certainly with some of our vacations, I mean, I know when we're going to be gone in advance. So, okay. Enough sermonizing on that one. Item C. We're not in a position to nominate a chairperson and vice chairperson because we do not have a quorum. So that will once again remain on hold. Board member reports. Does anybody present or via Zoom have any comments or anything for the benefit of the group? Mark?
If, I have, just one thing, just to piggyback on what you were saying. In government, finance and accounting, we have seasons, just like in public sector, right? You have quarterly reporting and whatnot. So, typically June is when we start the budget cycle. Okay, so June, July, that's when staff is preparing the budget. So maybe a good meeting time might be August. Okay. Another important one is typically is March and April. Here's why that is because we're done with our audited financial statements, and typically the auditors then present that to the board. And so we're done. We're done with those things. So those are kind of the peaks and the valleys that we have. So where we'll have content, that is not that all content isn't valuable, but those are the high ends of the department, as well as the main drivers of financial data.
Well, that certainly should be easy enough to factor into schedules. And in some prior years, certainly at the time of budget preparation and so on, this group has decided to have more than one meeting on the topic
Yeah,
and has met several times in order to comment effectively. I mean, my personal bias, and again, some of this may be overreach, but to me, again, for this group to achieve maximal effectiveness to benefit the town, there should also be discussion at some of these meetings about pertinent things going on in town that may not be directly financial, but are financially related, such as
Say it.
spending caps, such as sewer relining projects, which we will get to eventually, because certainly in the past and potentially, I think, if and as this group becomes, increasingly valued by the community, opinions that come out of here about, yeah, this is a good idea, or, well, maybe not so much, I think can be helpful. There are limited numbers of forums really where residents can learn about what's going on in town. And clearly major sources can be through the manager's letter, and then hopefully people will watch the town commission meetings and so on. But we know historically that people don't. So I think that the more avenues for that are, with reports to the commission, this is what the group recommends. And again, they're only recommendations. We don't decide anything, but I think that can be helpful to the whole governmental process, basically, which if it's done appropriately. And I think that those are all issues that should be coming up. And I've noticed that they're not appearing regularly on the agenda. And it's something that I think needs to change.
Yeah, if I could add, I would like to see you guys in June, if I could. So we can present our preliminary budget to the FAB first for recommendation to the commission before they set millage rates. Versus we have over the last few years, which is unfortunate, given you a budget that's pretty much baked and said, yeah, you're good with it, So I'd rather have it on the front end a little bit more to say, here's our preliminary numbers, what draws your attention or concern. And then that way, when we take it to the commission, we can say the FAB is on board with X, Y, and Z, questioning A over here. So that way we can say with more confidence when we go to the commission to set millage rates that the financial advisory board of the community is on board or has some different recommendations. That would be helpful, like, mid-June-ish. I know it's not the best time, but mid-June is a good time for us to get that first budget to y'all to take a look at. And again, that's usually a 75% budget, right? That's really something to start chewing on and you have a better chance to shape it than when we already give you the cake frosted and decorated,
Yeah, and again, that's my point, basically. If this group is going to be of value, it needs to be proactively involved and on a regular basis, and it has to start from within. I mean, if we can't get a quorum together, it kind of defeats the purpose of things. So, all right, enough. Anybody have any other comments? Anything to add? I don't think that we have anything to formally report to the commission this time around. With that, I will read off. Don't forget, tonight is the mingle and jingle at the church from 5:30 to 7:30, and there is transport available. Everybody can go online and check the flyers and so on and so forth. December 12th, 1:00, Code Enforcement Board. December 14th, 9:30 in the morning, Planning Board. And with that, we are ready to adjourn, and we will adjourn if there is no objection at 10:57. Thank you all.